Awesome. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and log in here. We are in the senior living solution. So as just a point of reference, the URL for that is the BHS SL. So that is the site that we are going to be working in today. Just as a reminder here, you will always be logging in with the sign in with Matrix Care SSO button. That is going to bring you to a secondary login page where you will enter your credentials. For me, I am not set up with single sign-on, so I will be utilizing the initial sign-in button. Okay. And upon login here, it is going to bring you directly to, for me, I have a home page set, so it's brought me to evaluations. If you do not yet have a home page set, it will bring you to the release notes page of the solution. What I'm going to walk through here is how to set those favorites and just general navigation pieces here on the main page. Right up at the very top here, you'll notice that there are specific menus. You may not see the system setup menu. That is going to be based upon the security access that you have. Today's call is going to be focusing on this clinical menu here. So we are going to be walking through each of these 4 areas under that clinical menu. At the end of today's call, I'll be walking through specific reports, specifically the evaluations due report and the point of care task history report. This particular report does pull information in from the documentation from CareAssist, so you don't necessarily have to log right into CareAssist to be able to run that report. You can do it directly from this solution. So I'll be ending today's call with just an overview of those 2 specific reports. Okay. Right above these menu items, you will notice that I have a little blue hyperlink that says Home. Now that is my home page. To the right of that, you notice that I've got 2 stars. One has a green plus sign and the other has a red minus sign. This is allowing me to set a favorite as well as a home page. These operate just like they do if you were on a browser where you have specific web pages that you visit on a frequent basis. You save them as a favorite so you don't have to retype that URL every time. This allows you to set specific pages as your favorites or as a home page. Now, in an example of that here, if I were to go first to forms, for example, and I wanted that to be a favorite of mine, I could simply navigate to that menu first, then go to the green plus sign star, and I'd like to set it as a favorite. I can name this however I would like. I'm just going to use the system menu name, so I'm just going to put in forms, go ahead and save, and that is going to add a link here at the top. These links are then just navigational items, so you can click them to navigate around within the system. You can have up to 8 favorites across the top here. I can't foresee that you would need that many because there's really only 6 pages that you would frequently be visiting. And so for that reason here, the favorites up here, you'll probably maybe only have a max of 6. Okay. That being said, one of them I did set as a home page. If I would like to modify that, so perhaps I would like to change what my home page is, then I can go ahead and I'm going to go into the delete favorites. I would like to change this from home. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take off that home option, delete that. You'll notice that I just then have forms. If I would like to make the forms my home page, then instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to go there first, go to that plus sign, and I'm just going to mark it as my home page versus a favorite. And then you'll notice that the shortcut is automatically named as home page. Whatever you do set as a home page is going to be where you're navigated upon login. So when I initially logged in, I was brought directly to the evaluations page because I did make that my home page. Okay. I actually am going to change that back though because I would like evaluations to be the home page. So I'm just going to move back to evals. Go ahead and hit that plus sign, make it my home page, and go ahead and save that. Okay. And then obviously to the right of that, if you want to modify or adjust your favorites, you can always do so with that little red plus sign or that red star. To the right of that, you'll have a little filter here. The filter is going to change and modify based upon the menu that you happen to be within. So if I happen to open that filter up here, Because we are on the evaluations page, the options that I see here are going to be specific related to evals. Right at the very top here, you'll notice that I am defaulted to a specific company and community. The community, if you do have access to more than one, so for example, with Esquiline, if you do happen to work within the IL and the AL, those are set up as two separate communities in here. So for you all, you will see these two options if you happen to work at both buildings. So you'll see Esquiline IL Apartments and Esquiline St. Francis AL. Those will be the two communities that you see in your dropdown. You can choose to select all, which just allows you to see everybody all together, or you can pick and choose if you want to see just one community over the other. Okay. For the Villa of St. Benedict, you are listed as Villa St. Benedict right in here under the community name. That should be the only community that you see in the dropdown, and so that will be what defaults here in that dropdown. Okay. Today I am in the training community, so the information that I'll be utilizing and showing today is all fake information, specifically used for training. I'm going to go ahead and X out that search, go ahead and close that up. Right below the community, you'll notice there is also care settings. So in here in the training community, I do have 3 different care settings. I've got AL, IL, and memory care. So for the Villa of St. Benedict, you will have this particular option, and this is how you will navigate between the different care settings within your building. Okay. If you don't select anything specifically, the system will assume that you want to see it all. And so blank means all. And that's pretty much a rule of thumb across the system. So if you don't select something specific, it's going to assume you'd like to see everything. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and leave that open. Right under the evaluations for, these are essentially the status of the record. So right now, this is showing residents. So those residents that are within my building. This is the default for the filter, so it's always going to show residents first. However, you can choose to include anybody that's in that move-in process. A move-in person is someone who's been scheduled to move in. So that person is in the process. They might have committed to move into your building. They've got a move-in date. And so you are working on that individual as you prep to move them into the building. Okay. And then you've also got moved out. So anybody that's moved out of the building, you can always search for those particular status or those particular people's evaluations if you need to look back at those. Okay. To the right of the evaluations for is the status. This is the status of the actual evaluation itself. There are a couple of different statuses that are going to be applied. Okay. By default, this filter will show active, in progress, and then those that have yet to be done. An active evaluation is one that has been finalized. So you've gone through the whole process, everything's good to go, it's been finalized. That is an active eval. An in-progress evaluation is one that you have started, but you haven't quite finished. So you might still be gathering information. You might still have a few forms that you are completing as part of that evaluation. And so that particular evaluation is in progress. The status of yet to be done, this is the status that you will initially see for all of your residents because there is no historical evaluation in the system yet for them. So there has never been anything to reference back to, so eval yet to be done. Okay. That is also the status that you will see for anybody that's in the move-in process. So as someone is in the process of move-in, because there is no prior eval in the system, you will initially see the yet to be done option listed next to their name. Okay. These other 3 particular statuses will come into play as you actually start to use the system. So canceled, that is essentially where you have started an evaluation and for whatever reason, you had to cancel that eval. That is typically what's going to be assigned. For example, if you happen to have someone who is scheduled in the move-in process and you started that evaluation and then that person changed their mind, they are not going to come anymore. That particular person, when you cancel their move-in, their corresponding evaluation becomes closed or canceled. Same thing will happen if you have started an evaluation on someone and then that person moves out, but you haven't yet completed that eval. That corresponding evaluation will become canceled. A closed evaluation is a status that is assigned to any historical evals. So thinking in terms of the normal cycle of an evaluation process, if you happen to do an evaluation at the move-in and then you do another evaluation 90 days later or 160 days later, whatever that particular schedule looks like for you, once you have the new evaluation finalized as part of that, the old one will become closed. So in the example, if you've done an initial move-in eval and now you're doing the 90-day and you have finalized that 90-day, that initial evaluation will become closed. So you'll be able to look back at historical evaluations utilizing that status of closed. Okay. Deleted is just that. For whatever reason, you started the evaluation and you changed your mind, you deleted it. That one is typically more used if you happen to have a new evaluation template that's being rolled out and you want to use the new version. So you would delete the old, start the new eval. That one's used less frequently, but you can always still reference back to any evaluations that have been deleted. Okay. Under type, the type here is essentially the reason you're doing the evaluation. This also corresponds with when the next evaluation is going to become due. So for example, I see 5-day eval, change in condition, initial, and reassessment. So if this were an initial evaluation, when I go to finalize that eval, I would select the reason I did this was initial. And then as a result of selecting that particular option, it's going to prompt the next evaluation schedule. So whatever that might be, if it happens to be, 90 days from the date of that initial, then the next one will show as due 90 days from that initial. And that is going to display on the screen here so you can see that for this example here, I did an evaluation effective 1/8. The next one is due on 4/2. That particular next due date is coming from the type that I selected when I finalized that evaluation. So this one is the reason you're doing the eval, but it also corresponds to trigger when that next evaluation should become due in that particular cycle. Okay. And again, I haven't selected anything specific, so it is going to include all in my view. And so I'm going to go ahead and select off of that. Under the show option here, and you might think that I'm going over the filter a bit too much, but the filter is very important. Oftentimes what will happen is sometimes people will not notice that there is something in the filter and they can't find what they're looking for. So that's why I am going over this pretty detailed. Okay. Under the latest evaluations only, this is going to be the most recent status evals. So what I mean by that is if you have someone, for example, Patricia here, she's got 2 lines in here. One of them I see has an effective date and the other does not. This tells me that these are the most recent or latest evals for her. So she has one that's been active. That's why I see an effective date for this one, and I see one that's in progress. So because the active one has not been closed yet, and I'm still working on the new one, both will show in my view under the latest evaluations only. If I look at all, that is truly going to be everything that is across the board with these statuses. So if you select all here and you go and you show everything, that is truly going to be everything. So just keep that in mind. That might be a lot to look at, but you can always choose to do that if you'd like to. Okay. The next due from and to, this allows you to kind of work ahead. So if you need to see who's coming due next month or who is due this month, you can always do a next due and from to to. So if I needed to look for this month, and I'll just go through the end of the month, go ahead and hit that search here. I see that I've got one in here that is due. So I can see that Frank here is due, and it looks like he's actually past due. So I see that the next due is highlighted in red for me, and it's got a little warning symbol for me. And if I look at the legend here, it shows that that is past due. Okay. Now again, if you wanted to look ahead, you wanted to see what's coming next month, you can do that. That way you can kind of plan ahead to get those evaluations completed in time. Okay. The care level. This allows you to kind of see if I want to get a list, say, of everybody that's between a care level 3 and a care level 5. I can always do that. I also have the ability to get down to the more granular point value. So if I wanted to see everybody that's between not levels of care, but perhaps a point, so let's say, 45 to 60, anybody that happens to be within that point range. And that can be helpful. Let's say that you have the top end of a care level 3 is, say, that 45 or that 45 points. So if we have someone who's at 45 points, they're currently a level 3, but it is very likely that the next time we do an evaluation, they're going to move to that next level, depending on that progression. It's also going to allow you to see that, a difference between a top end level 2 and a lower end level 2. So you can see, if you've got, 50 level 2s, but, 70% of them are at that very top end of that level 2. It's just very helpful to know for staffing if you do have individuals that are at the higher level of care need. Okay. To the right of that, you've got heading, subheading, and selection details. These areas actually come directly from the evaluations itself. So what I mean by that is, if I'm just gonna do that search, I wanna bring everybody back from that initial search that I had done. What I mean by that is, let's say I'd like to see from the ADL section of all evaluations, and within that ADL section, I want to look at specifically dressing and grooming, and I want to get a list of everybody who's in that evaluation I had selected that they required extensive assistance, okay? In addition, I can choose to include any service plan notes. So any notes that I had entered as part of that selection would then display on my page. So if I go ahead and hit search here, I have several individuals who I had selected that particular response on the evaluation for, and I can see their specific notes over on the right-hand side. Okay. And then, as is the case with every page within Matrix Care here, you have the ability to export. This allows you to run reports directly from the page versus having to go and actually look up a report and toggle through that. You can actually export directly from here. And there you'll see that you have the PDF option as well as the Excel option. Okay. Once I go back to that filter here, I'm go ahead and close and clear those out here, bring everything back to the original view. And we're back to where we started. Okay. In addition to the filter, you also have the show hide columns information here. This specific one here is a user preference. So what I mean by that is that if there are particular columns of information that you do not want to see on your page, maybe they don't have any value to you, you can always come to that show hide column area, unselect that particular option, go ahead and save that. It is going to remove that column from view, and that will be remembered every time you revisit this page. So then that does become remembered and your preferences for this particular page. Okay. That show hide columns option is available in all of the particular menus, so you'll be able to do that on any page that you happen to visit. Okay. And then of course you've got your normal search option here if you need to look for a particular resident. So here if I was looking for Frank, because I noticed that he was that one that had that past due here, there's Frank, and I could begin working on him. Okay. Once I do select his particular line here, you'll notice that the buttons up at the top, the new option has become available. If I had, say, picked a different particular option, such as this one where it says in progress, you'll notice that the options up at the top are different. The button for modify becomes active, but I do not have the ability to create new because I already have an in progress eval. That is going to be the same thing here for if I had selected the active eval for Patricia. The system does recognize that I already have an in progress one, and so the options available for that current active one are very minimal. I will only have the ability to view or print that particular eval. Okay. On the page itself, you'll notice that there is a column here for forms, excuse me. If there's a green checkbox, that indicates that that particular form has been completed as part of the evaluation. These are also hyperlinks, so these will navigate you to that form if you do need to take a look at it. On this one here, for this in-progress eval, I do see that one of the forms has yet to be completed, and that is the new fall report. Okay. Where the other the other ones have been completed, so I see that little green checkbox. I can choose to complete this form directly from this page by selecting the link, and then I can go in, I can complete it. That will update this page here as well as the overall eval to indicate that that particular step has been completed. Okay. Now from here, I am going to go ahead and go to Frank. I'm going to go ahead and create a new evaluation here. So I'm going to go ahead and select him, go to New. Once I select that new option here, I have two options. I can either choose to create a new evaluation from scratch, and the different evaluations are going to be available to me. For you all, you will be utilizing the 1.0 IL or Illinois evaluation for AL and memory care. Okay, that is the particular evaluation template that you will be using because that has been specifically designed for your two communities or your 3 communities for Esquiline, excuse me. Now in here under the other option, you have the ability to copy forward from a prior evaluation. Okay, so when I am looking in here, I see that the most recent evaluation, 10/13/2020, that I can choose to take that particular evaluation and copy it. What that's going to allow me to do is pull in all of the answers, all of the questions, notes, and forms that were completed as part of that evaluation and pull it into this new one that I'm going to do. That allows me to then focus just in those areas that have truly changed, and I don't have to create the wheel every time I do an evaluation. It allows me to pull in all of that scheduling items as well. So any changes that have taken place to a schedule over the course of those months since that evaluation will also pull forward into this new template or this new copy forward option so that you don't have to go back and take a look at all of the schedule that you had completed and recreate that wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and select that particular option here. Go ahead and hit save. That will bring open that particular evaluation for me. Okay. And on this particular page here, you'll notice that at the very top is the banner. So this is a banner of information about our particular resident, Frank. And here, if I had information about his date of birth and all of that piece of information, that would flow directly in here. At this time, it doesn't look like his profile does have any of that information on it. So instead, what I see is a blank information for those 3 areas. I do see that he is in apartment number 103. He was admitted on 10/12 of 2010. He is in our training community. He's in the AL care setting of that community. And right here, I can see that his active points from that evaluation that we just copied from was 156 points, and he is a level 7. Now, I point this out because as I start to complete this evaluation, I am going to be able to see as those points or levels change. So if any options that I do on this copied evaluation indicate a change in the points or the level, I'll be able to see that in real time here on the left. So this allows me to see in just a reference here that the new evaluation has resulted in either a point change or a level of care change because I'll be able to always reference this piece up here at the top. Okay. Right on the in-progress evaluation summary, right below that, you'll notice that there is a hyperlink for forms required. So there were 3 forms that were prompted from this evaluation, and so I can choose to click that. That is going to bring me to 3 tiles down at the bottom here, where I can go ahead and select each of these. These little squares with an outward pointing arrow does indicate that this is going to be a pop-up window, and that pulls open that pop-up window so that I can then complete that particular form. So I note that because it is important. The browser that you are using, you want to allow pop-up windows for using this system for things like this so that the forms will open for you as well as certain reports. so that those particular items will open for you and they don't get stuck behind. Okay, so you do want to make sure you've got your pop-up allowed for these particular sites for matrix care. Okay. From here, I'm going to go ahead and just move on up there. Then right below that link, you'll notice that there are additional tiles. These are the headers of the overall evaluation. These are also navigation areas. So these allow you to actually navigate within the evaluation. So on the left-hand side, we've got a navigation panel. On the right-hand side, you'll notice that the page changed and moves you to that specific area. Okay. So if I'm going to say ADLs, I move into the dressing and grooming area, it's going to bring me to that section of the eval. Okay. You'll also notice on the navigation that there are points. So the points that have come from that particular section of the eval are displayed. So I can see right here for ADL, there are 87 total points coming from that particular heading. And of those 87 points, 30 come from dressing and grooming. Okay. So you actually see that summary breakdown right on the navigation panel. So kind of keeping in reference there, of the 156 total points, 15 come from cognitive psychosocial, 87 from ADLs, and then you can see an even further point breakdown within those sections. Okay. For our purposes today, I do want to focus in on the ADL section. This happens to be the area that is most often where you're going to find some of those scheduling items. So I'm going to go to that dressing and grooming. And then from the dressing and grooming, you'll notice that you have directions right at the very top here. So select all that apply. If using 2 staff, double the points for that particular category, exclude 2 staff for transfers, etc. And add that in the mobility section. Okay. From this particular area, I did previously select extensive assistance, puts on clothing on or takes clothing off with partial assistance. So there's some specific information about that. Now, if there has been a change with this particular option, what I can do here is I'm going to select 58. Okay. That's going to go ahead and open up that particular selection. And here at the very top, this is where I'm able to set the schedule for Frank. This schedule does flow to the service plan. And then this is also going to be the schedule for your Care Assist. So this is the schedule for this tasks as it shows within Care Assist for your caregivers. Okay. So in here, this is going to be something that he'll need assistance with twice daily. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that in. That automatically is going to show 40 calculated points. So you'll notice here we've got 40 points. And keeping in mind that particular instruction on that MAID page where it said double those points if it requires 2 people for assistance, this is where you would double those points. So if it were 2 people, I would just move that to 80 points. Okay. I can go ahead and move that back though, because I am just going to leave it as 40. Okay. And I do see a chat option here. Screen is blurry again. Okay, so let me zoom in here. Okay, is that a little bit better? Ooh, that got a little big. Let's go back out.
Yes, much better.
Okay. I'm just going to go back out just a little bit because there's a lot. There we go. Okay. Is that okay? Okay. So from this page here, I entered in 2. So I've got a number of 2 options, and then I've got calculated points. Now on the right-hand side of this, you do see that there's a care by. So this is who is responsible to provide this particular care. This does show up on your service plan, so it indicates who's responsible on the service plan. And right here, you'll notice it does default to the resident assistant as the person being responsible for this. If it does need to change, this is a drop down, so you can select a different staff person. Okay, but you will see that pretty much it's going to default to the resident assistant. Okay, if this instead is something that an outside agency or an outside provider is going to be providing, you'll notice that there is an option here for third-party care. Under the third-party care, you want to go ahead and select which type of provider it is, okay? And under care by, you would actually go ahead and just select. So you would change that from any of the internal, or you would select none for that care by because it is going to be done by a third-party provider, okay? That being said here, I do want to go ahead and leave it as resident assistant. And then right below here, you'll notice that I now have two options under schedule. Because I did select 2 for the occurrences, it's giving me 2 time slots for a day. I can choose to select by shift, or I can choose to enter a specific time, okay? If I choose to enter a specific time, this does show up on and helps to organize the tasks inside of Care Assist. So for example, if you schedule everything by shift, if I select shift 1 here, if the start of your shift is say 7 a.m. and you schedule all of those initial or first tasks of the day for shift 1, the way that that will display inside of Care Assist is that all of those tasks are going to show up as due at 7 a.m. because that is the start of shift 1. Obviously, if the start of shift 1 for you were, 6:30, it would show up as due at 6:30. So just keep that in mind. It does show up as due at the beginning of that particular shift in terms of the time organization on Care Assist. Okay. If you'd like to spread it out a little bit more, you can choose to select the requested time. In which case, say if this is an 8 a.m., because this individual likes to get up a little later, I can choose the 8 a.m. and then this particular initial task will show as due at 8 a.m. on the Care Assist. Okay. And I am going to choose to do that here. So I'm going to do 8 a.m. and then for the second, so the bedtime option, I'm going to do 9 p.m. Okay. There is also an option here under schedule for schedule assistant. I go ahead and select that here. Schedule assistant allows you to see the schedule across your entire community for particular tasks. Okay. So in here, I can see that this is scheduling, shows scheduled tasks for all assignments at the training as in this particular community, as well as for Frank, whom we're working on right now. Okay. Now I can choose to sort these tasks. So I can see, what tasks are due during a shift 1, or I can choose to look for a specific kind of task. So I'm looking for maybe dressing and grooming. And across the entire community here, I can see that from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., I have 4 tasks that are due, one of which includes Frank. So I can see that includes Frank is listed. So if I click on that 4 here, that does pull open those 4 residents, and you can see what that care is. So I can see that Robert here is extensive assistance, the extensive assistance here for Frank. For Helen, it was Ted Hose. And then for Helen Park here, we also have an extensive assistance, okay? You'll notice that the minutes, some of these have 0, some have 15. The minute value coming from here is coming from that duration field on the main page, okay? So if I go ahead and open that up here, this is where that's coming from. So if I'm estimating that this should take approximately 15 minutes, that duration is then going to go into that calculation for the schedule assistant. So you can see of that 1 hour, 60-minute window, how much of that time is being taken up by what particular resident. And it just allows you to really be able to see across the board and be able to monitor and kind of spread that time out if you do have someone that's got quite a bit of a need during that particular time frame. Okay. So the scheduling assistant allows you to really organize across the community, helps you to kind of plan your scheduling and your staffing. And you'll notice it does organize by the time. Now, if I do choose to select instead by shift, okay, I'm only going to see shift 1. Here we've got the shifts So for this particular one, I'm actually seeing that we've got time frame in here, but then if I look on this 3 here, there are those 3 individuals that I happen to have selected to schedule by shift. Okay. So if you've got individuals that you scheduled by time, they will display in the hour markings. If you've scheduled by shift instead, they will display under the shift times. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You do want to try to be consistent to be able to really fully utilize the schedule assistant. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close that out here and bring myself back. Okay. Now, right underneath that schedule, you'll notice there's a section for evaluation notes for service plan. The information that I enter here is going to show on that service plan, but it's also the instructions to my RAs inside of Care Assist. So this is how I would like them to perform or provide this particular care for Frank. I do have a few quick note options at the very bottom. These are specific standard items that can be added. So rather than having to rewrite a similar phrase over and over, if you do use particular standard language across your service plans or your evaluations, these are created as quick notes so that you can add them rather than having to retype them. Okay. Now, these particular areas you can always modify, and you do want to modify this to make this more person-centered. So for example, you could say assist Frank to put on and take off clothing, help him and set up for grooming, and etc. So you can make this a little bit more specific, even for things such as, you know, he's got a specific pajama set that he likes to wear. So you want to say, you know, Frank prefers his plaid pajamas. Okay. You have a large character set here. So you have 4,000 characters. So it's a pretty large text field that you can really customize and enter information into. And again, this is going to flow not only to the service plan, but it is also the instructions for your caregivers inside of Care Assist. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And here you'll notice it just pop-up notification as just a quick reminder to double the points if 2 people are needed, and always to make sure those quick notes are personalized. Okay. And as I scroll on down here, I have to, I'm going to actually move to another particular task. The particular task that I showed was a daily task. I'm actually going to go to bathing now and walk through a weekly type of task. Okay. From the bathing section here on the right, I do see that I had selected assistance with bathing and shower, partial to total. And so what here, I can actually go ahead and select, I'm going to keep that the same here, but I'm going to go ahead and click on that to add and edit that particular option. And in here, I can see that we have a number of occurrences, 3. Perhaps this needs to increase. Maybe this needs to be 4 times per week instead. You'll notice that those point values do increase. And then also you'll notice it looks pretty similar to what it did before. The only difference now is that I actually have the ability to select the day of the week as well as the specific time or shift. Okay, you'll see that I do still see that schedule assistant. They'll be able to see. The schedule assistant is in a week view, so you'll be able to see the entire week if you would prefer to. So you'll be able to see those weekly types of tasks included. Okay. Now in here, I did select Monday, Wednesday, Friday initially, but perhaps I need to adjust this. This is going to be, say, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Okay. So I can adjust those particular days. It has retained the timing that I had selected previously on that past evaluation, and maybe those are still accurate for these different days, but perhaps not. Perhaps for Sunday, he gets up a bit earlier, so we'll do it a 7 a.m. Tuesday, actually, that is accurate. He actually goes out and participates in activities, and he'd like to have his bath or his shower right before he goes out. So we'll do that 3 p.m. And then on Saturdays, 8 a.m. works as well. So I'll go ahead and select that. Okay. And then as I move on down here, I'll get those evaluation notes from service plan. So those are the notes that were in there before from that copy forward. Okay. Now the notes for reference, sometimes in a service plan, you might enter additional notes that aren't going to show on your inside of the Care Assist. So it's just sort of a note that you want just on the service plan, but not necessarily specific for your caregivers. Those types of notes display in this field for reference if you need to carry those forward. Okay. And here you'll see that you've actually got those notes in here. It looks like we had kind of adjusted these previously: assist him with drying off, assist him in and out of the tub or shower. And he actually really prefers a shower, so we're going to take that tub piece out. Adjust that over there. Okay, so, and then right below that here, you can delete all evaluation notes if you want to kind of start from scratch, but again, you can choose to kind of just modify from there if you need to. Okay, so go ahead and save that. Again, kind of that pop-up reminder. Okay, so those are two examples, the first of which was daily, where you have the ability to select either the shift or a time. And then the second is weekly, where you can select the day of the week as well as that time. And then, of course, your evaluation notes for service plan, which again show to your service plan, but are also your instructions for your caregivers. Okay. Now from here, I'm going to go ahead and just hit save on the overall evaluation. And I do want to go ahead and make sure I've completed those particular forms. So I'm going to go over to the left-hand side and select the forms to bring those to myself, bring those forward. Okay. You can choose to complete the forms at the time of the prompting. Forms are actually prompted specifically from a selection in your evaluation. So for example, if I'm under mobility, I go to stability and falls here. In that selection here, I selected rarely falls less than 3 times per year. And from this particular selection, I was prompted to need to complete the falls risk 2.04. So you'll notice here under that particular column, forms required, here is that form. This is a hyperlink, it will pull open that form. So while I'm completing the evaluation, I can choose to complete the falls risk at the same time. And I'm looking here, it does automatically save. I just happen to hit save just because that's my default, but yes, that page does automatically save. And I was just referencing a chat question from VSB in whether or not the particular evaluation will auto save versus having to hit the save manually. Okay. Now from here, I can again choose to select the form directly from the question, or I can choose to save the forms at the end and do that at the end of the overall evaluation. You can choose whatever your preferred workflow is. So just keeping that in mind, okay? I am just gonna go ahead and do it from the left here though. So I'll go ahead and open up the first one, assessments for medications. Okay. This is again a pop-up window, so I'm gonna go ahead and expand that out so we can see that. You'll notice that the form kind of looks very similar to the overall evaluation, where you have your left-hand navigation and then the right hand is where you're going to see the questions and be able to make those responses. So from here, you'll notice I have green checkbox down the row, down the selections here, and that just indicates that it has copied forward my prior options or prior selections from this form. And so what I can do is I can just simply review these. You'll notice in this particular selection, when it comes to forms, this save option is grayed out. I can't click on that save. What the system is actually wanting you to do is engage with the form. It wants to know that you actually have taken a look at this form and reviewed it versus just opening it, hitting save, and moving on. So in order for the system to note that you had actually reviewed this, you do have to engage with the form. And if there has truly been no changes after you've reviewed that particular form, then a simple toggle between options is all you would need to do. So for example, with this one, face-to-face, this is a routine monitoring, but truly it's just a change in condition. There's no change there. You just need to sort of prompt the system to let it know that you have actually engaged with the form. By doing that simple toggle back and forth, that save option becomes available. Okay. This is actually going to be an annual, so I'm going to actually change that. And then I'm going to continue on medication review. Yep. Reminder, client can state name. Yes. I'm just kind of reviewing each of these options here. We do the administration that for them. Okay, I'm just kind of doing a review. Not applicable. He no longer has eye drops, so we'll take that one off. No longer has eardrops either. And we'll go ahead and save that. Okay. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and close this particular window. Once I've closed that, you'll notice that the overall evaluation is going to update. Okay. And now if I'm looking at that particular form here, you'll notice it does have a green checkbox. Okay. I do want to take a look at the fall risk and make sure that that's all completed. Nothing's changed there. I'll go ahead and open that particular one up. Yep. Visual impairment is poor. Okay. We'll go ahead that way. And that looks to be good. So I'm just sort of re-engaging, reviewing my responses from last time, making sure there's no additional changes, or if there have, just making those changes themselves. Go ahead and close that particular form. And then for the new fall report, this one's slightly different. Okay. Resident room. And now this one looks to be one, yeah, SNL changes. Okay. Close that form up. Okay. Now from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and we're going to walk through the buttons up at the top. So as you go through and complete an evaluation, the information is going to be saved. And then in order to move forward, you will need to go to approvals and you'll need to select send approvals. Okay. This actually does two different things. When I select this, send approvals. There we go. You'll get a notification here. The first part of that notification is that if there are approvals that are required as part of your evaluation, the individuals that have the ability to do those approvals will receive an email notification. And this also then creates the service plan. Okay. So while the service plan is a mirror image of your evaluation, it is a separate document that does have the ability for you to make some adjustments to it. And so by selecting that send approval, it does create the individual service plan as well. Now, from my understanding is there are no approvals that are prompted from overall evaluations for you. And so you will still need to select this particular option to create that service plan, but there won't be any approvals that are required. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select OK. And then from here, I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit. There we go. And from here, I can actually, that zoomed out a little more than I wanted. Let's go in here. 150. That's perfect. Okay. Now we want to walk through and finalize the overall evaluation. So sending approvals creates your service plan, and now we can finalize the evaluation. If you haven't completed the forms that are required, you will not be able to finalize the evaluation. You will just get a prompt letting you know that there are forms that are still needed, and so you will need to go back and complete those. Okay? From here, you'll notice that it does fill in this effective date. This is actually something that you can change, even though the cursor does change to sort of this sort of circle with a slash through it. You are able to still adjust this particular effective date. So if the evaluation is actually needing to be effective, say tomorrow, or perhaps it's effective last week on the 5th, I can do that. And then in the change in condition, so this is where we get into the type. Why did I complete this particular evaluation? It wasn't a change in condition. This is actually just the reassessment. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Go ahead and finalize. Select yes to continue. And we'll get a success message that populates at the bottom here. Okay. Once the finalize has been completed, you'll notice that the other buttons become grayed out. And instead, you have the ability to view, and you also have the ability to print. The view option is just simply viewing the overall evaluation. You won't be able to make any modifications to it. The print option is obviously being able to see the full option. Under the full print options here, you've actually got four different options, okay? So the full print allows you to print the entire evaluation, and what I mean by that is it's going to include not only your responses, but all possible responses. So for example, if there are 6 different options underneath a particular section and you only selected one of those options, the full print will show all of the options in addition to the one that you made. The short print is just going to be your specific selections within that the evaluation. Resident forms, when I do this one, this actually is going to allow you to print not only the evaluation, short or full, but also any forms that were prompted from that eval, okay? So depending on which version of the evaluation you want, you can choose that as well as being able to print all of the forms that were associated, okay? Now, under the print, there's also the print blank forms. This one actually allows you to print the overall evaluation and any of the forms that are available, okay? Now, this is going to be a blank one, so this is something that you might do if perhaps you are going to visit someone outside of the community and maybe you don't have a laptop. Maybe you're doing an in-home assessment and you want to bring some of those pages with you. You can actually do that print blank form. One thing to note, when you do it from a resident here, it does put that resident's name at the top of that form. Oh, they took that out. Okay. So what I mean here is this is the blank form. Okay. So again, this is something you'd really only want to do if you don't have a laptop when you're doing the evaluation, and instead you're doing it on paper when you go to visit someone. And then in which case you would bring this information back and then enter it into the system. Okay. Go ahead and cancel that. Okay. And then under the signature component here, you have the ability to upload signatures, okay? Now this is still a wet signature, so you still need to print the page out and sign it, but then you can scan or upload that particular signature back into the system. Once you've signed the page a wet ink signature, you would scan that to your desktop, whatever process you use for that, and then you can go ahead and browse out to the desktop to pick up that signature. And then what will happen is it will then become associated with this particular evaluation, so then you can view that particular signature whenever you're looking at this particular eval, okay? I'm going to go back to the evaluations main page by selecting back to evaluations. Okay. And on this particular page here, go ahead and add that signature column back in. Okay. I'm going to scroll over here. I'm zoomed in quite a bit, which is why it's put a scroll bar at the bottom there. So under that signature column, if there is no signature on record, you will see an add option. Okay. Once a signature has been associated, you will see a view option instead. You can then click the view and be able to see that signature. Okay. From here, what I'd like to do is I do want to go ahead and move forward with the service plan. So because I have now finalized Frank's evaluation, I created that service plan. So now I want to go through and I want to take a look at that service plan and finalize it as well. So I'm going to go back to the clinical menu here. And I'm going to go to service plan. And from within the service plans area here, I can go ahead and look for Frank. In the service plans area, you'll also have a filter. You'll notice the filter is slightly different. However, you will be able to see here service plans for. It does default to resident, and so the service plans for residents are going to display by default first. You'll also notice you have service plan status. The statuses are the same as what they were in the evaluations page, and they have the same meaning. Okay. I am looking for Frank here because he is the individual that I just worked on. And here I can see there are two lines. Okay. As I'm scrolling over here, I just want to indicate why that is. Okay. The first line has a evaluation status of active. That is the evaluation that I just finalized here. You can see that I had made that evaluation effective as of 1/5. Okay. And because I did finalize that evaluation, part of that, I had created my service plan. So here's that in progress service plan. However, because the service plan that I just created is still in progress, the other evaluation, the one that is currently active and is currently driving everything for my caregivers inside of Care Assist, that service plan is active, okay? However, the associated evaluation for that has now been closed because I've done a new evaluation, okay? I do want to go ahead and look at that in progress service plan here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that line. And up here, I can go ahead and hit modify to pull open that service plan and do any last minute adjustments that I'd like to do before it goes to Care Assist. Okay. Now in here, you'll notice that the view is slightly different. You still have the navigation components on the left and the working zone on the right, just like you did within the evaluations, as well as when you opened up a form. So here I can go to, say, ADLs. You'll notice that I still see the information that I had before. So here's the ADLs, sensory assistive devices. As I scroll down here, here's that dressing and grooming section. You'll notice that you still have access to that schedule assistant. So if you do need to do last minute adjustments because now you have a specific time slot on Tuesday, say, that's super busy, and you need to kind of work those out and reorganize those tasks a little bit, you can use that schedule assistant to take a look at that. And then from here, if I needed to do any changes, I can go ahead and select edit. That does open up the option here for me to do adjustments. I do want to show that there are specific adjustments that cannot be made from here. The first of which is you can't change the level of assistance that this person needs from the service plan. That would have to be done on the evaluation. In addition to that, you will not be able to adjust the frequency. So that essentially, because the frequency and the when to do actually relates to points and therefore level of care, these options, if you have to increase the frequency or decrease the frequency for a task, that does have to be done as a new evaluation, as either a change in condition or if it happens to be part of your regular evaluation schedule. Okay. So increases or decreases to the frequency of a task does need to be done through an evaluation, because that does have implications for your overall level of care and thus your billing purposes. Okay. However, you do have the ability to adjust your from and to. So if I needed to take this, and maybe this is not 10 p.m., but maybe this actually needed to be 9 p.m. for this, I could go ahead and adjust that. I could actually even change it here if I don't want it to be by time, but instead I want it to be by shift. I can do that. You'll also notice here that I have the ability to adjust the interval. So this is how long I assume this is going to take. Okay. And then here's those additional notes area that I had referenced. So in the additional notes, this is information that you want just on the service plan, but not in Care Assist. Okay, so this is just specific information that relates to this particular task or need, but isn't necessarily any information that your caregivers need to know. It's not any sort of instruction for them, but it's just additional notes that you need to have on that service plan. Okay, and so you have an additional notes field there. I don't have anything to add for that particular section, so I am just going to go ahead and save my change for the time. Okay. And then I'm moving down here and just kind of doing a quick review, see if there's any additional adjustments that I would like to make here. And maybe for this one for Thursday, let's do 8:30 instead of 8 a.m. And I did not put an AM, I just left it as an M. So I do want to go back and put that A in there. There we go. And here I am going to go ahead and put in the duration. So it should take 30 minutes. I'm looking here, estimates 30 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that in here. This actually then flows into your schedule assistant. So again, you can kind of monitor how much time you actually have available within an hour or a shift. Okay. And there we go. I'm just doing a quick review of everything. Don't need to make any other adjustments in here. So I'm going to go ahead and finalize this particular service plan. When it comes to finalizing your service plan, the date and time are very important. It is 10:16 a.m. Central Standard Time where I am at. And so as a result of that, if there are tasks that are scheduled for, say, prior to the 10:17 a.m., those tasks will not show up in Care Assist today. They will show up tomorrow because it is past their due times. Okay. Same thing goes for those weekly tasks. Today is Thursday, so if we had a weekly task that was, say, due Friday, it's not going to show up in Care Assist today. It will show up then tomorrow for Friday. Okay, so just keep that in mind when it comes to the effective date and then the time that you are doing it. Okay, now we have finalized our service plan here. So I now have just got one line for Frank. And here I see that it's been active and I have my finalization and everything looks to be good here. Okay. Before I move into forms, does anyone have any questions about this particular process with the evaluations and service plans? Go ahead and make sure to unmute your line if you do have a question. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If you chose the third party selection, like maybe they hired a caregiver, does that delete the points then that you had entered or selected before?
It does not. So if you don't want those points calculated or added on, then what you can do is, I'll go and open an in-progress evaluation here and I'll show that to you. Okay, so here's Pat. I'm gonna go ahead and modify. So if that were the case, then you don't want those point values calculated because perhaps you don't want to bill them for that because it's not something you're responsible for. We'll go to ADLs, dressing and grooming, and I'll go ahead and pick on this extensive assistance one. The best way to do that is then under one to do, you actually just change it to none. That will take out the points. And then you select your third party over here. Okay. And that will also take out that schedule inside of Care Assist, so your caregivers aren't showing that they need to do that task. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? Okay. So from here, I do want to just indicate when it comes to service plans, if you do have changes to your services between evaluations, you can always complete a new service plan to go back and adjust that schedule or the days of the week if necessary. Okay. So you can do new service plans in between your evaluation. And then if you do that copy forward option or function when it comes to the eval, the next time it comes due, it will copy the most recent service plans information in terms of scheduling into that eval. So you won't have to reference back and forth, okay? Okay. Any other last minute questions before we move on to the notes and the forms?
You know, I have one other question.
Yeah.
For the modify, if you choose modify the evaluation, does that save the one that you modified, or does that actually change it?
Well, it depends if you've done anything in the eval. So when you hit modify, it pulls open the eval. If you haven't changed anything with it, then it's just going to be what it was before. If you have changed something with it, then yes, it does auto save.
It auto saves the initial one, the one that you changed.
Right, yeah. So any changes you make will be auto saved. Is that answering your question? I think I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah, what about the historical information, you know, that the evaluation was before you modified it?
Oh, yeah, so absolutely. So let me go back here. The historical one is still active until you finalize the new one. And so let's see here, like Patricia, for example. Okay, so she's got it in progress and she's got an active. So here's the new one you're working on, and here's the old one. So you can still always go back and look at this one, and you can do the view. So when you're working on the new one, it will become in progress. If you copy the information forward, it's going to copy things in. But then obviously, as you're doing changes, those things will move. But the original version of that copy will always be there under the status of active until the in progress one is finalized. Is that answering your question? I just want to make sure I'm getting that correctly.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It just isn't going to show maybe like alongside your in progress one if that's what you're looking for. So you would need to go back out and take a look at it. But it would be under that view option. You could do the full or short. Any other questions? Okay, well, perfect. Then I am going to go ahead and move on. We'll go into forms here. Okay. Forms can be done independent of your evaluation. So if, for example, you happen to have done a, let's do like a medication administration form as part of the evaluation, and maybe it's your policy that you do that form every 90 days or every 60 days or 30 days, you can always do those forms more frequently. Or if you happen to need to complete an entirely new form, say you had a fall and you now need to do a fall risk form, you can go ahead and do that independent of the eval. So if I go in and I select new here, under record type, you can select the type of record that you're working on. So if it happens to be a lead, a resident, or a scheduled move-in. The lead is not one that you'll see because you're not utilizing marketing. So you won't ever see that lead record type, okay? You're also not utilizing the respite module, so the respite is not something you'll see either, okay? So really what you'll see is resident or scheduled move-in, okay? So I'll go to resident, then I can select the resident from the drop-down. So I'm actually gonna pick on, let's pick on Frank again. Okay, and I have the same option that I did with the eval. I can create a brand new form, and then here are a list of all of the forms that can be selected and done. Or I can choose to copy an existing form forward. So then these are all of the forms that have been done for him in the past. And then I can choose to copy a form forward, okay? I'm actually gonna go ahead and just select a new one. And this time I'm gonna do, let's do the depression scale, okay? And we'll go ahead and hit add. Okay. And now that form opens up full page. Okay. And then you can just simply walk through the form itself. Okay. Now, with this particular form, it does look like there's a red star, and that indicates to me that there are questions within that section that are required. And so over on the right-hand side, I do see some red stars on those specific questions. Okay. And it actually looks like all of the questions within that section are required. But then you'll notice that these other questions do not have red stars, indicating that they're not required, okay? So I can just go through and I can go ahead and answer these questions. Just kind of picking random stuff here. And then the GDS score. So from here, I can see that it's a 2. So here's the 2. If the GDS score is 1 or less, do not need to answer more. Well, it's 1 or more, so I do need to respond to these questions. So go ahead and answer these. Okay. And okay. And then we've got to the summary section here. So 5 to 9 indicates depression. Above 9 usually indicates depression, indicates intervention taken. And then for us, he is a 3. So now I'm looking here, I've got 3 total. So 5 to 9, this is not applicable. No referrals are necessary. Oop. Okay. So some of these forms will give particular instruction. Okay. And then I can choose, I'm gonna go ahead and finalize this particular form, select my effective date. And under the type here, none of the forms are set up with any particular kind of recurring schedule. And so the NA is the only option to select. Okay. Okay, so now if I'm picking on Frank here again, here's Frank. And I can see that he has a couple different forms that we have done for him. So there's that geriatric, the GDS that I just did. There are the fall forms. So these actually bottom 3 forms were done as part of the overall evaluation. And I can actually see that because on them, there's an evaluation date. Okay. Whereas these other particular forms were done independent of an evaluation, and so there is no evaluation date. Okay. You'll also notice that these last 3 forms also have points and a level of care, which again helps me to see that this was done as part of an evaluation. Okay. Now, forms again can be done independent of an evaluation, or they can be done as part of an evaluation, depending upon what responses you entered in that overall evaluation. Okay. Now, when it comes to the forms area, there's a navigational thing to be aware of, and that is if you are doing a brand new form, one that has never been done on that particular resident before, you want to make sure to not first select anything within the table below. Okay. Once you select the table, the system assumes that you want to work specifically with just that resident and you're wanting to work on just that particular form. Okay. So if you do need to complete a brand new form that's never been used on this particular resident before, make sure just to not select anything on the table first, but instead just go and hit new right away. Okay. So, and really the big difference here is being able to select the resident and then being able to get this option here to select from a different form. If you first select a resident, so if I select Frank here instead and I hit new, it is just going to be that specific form. Okay, so just keeping that in mind because it is going to be something where if you want to complete a brand new, completely new form that's never been done before on that resident, you want to go to new first rather than selecting the resident from the table. Okay. Okay. Now, questions about forms before I move into the clinical notes section. Forms are pretty slim and pretty easy to use. Do you have any specific questions about forms or thoughts on what forms you had? I think you had maybe sent a couple of them to Linda. Any questions about this particular area? Okay, perfect. Well, then I'll move on to clinical notes then. I'm going to go into clinical. I'm going to go to notes. And in here, I can see that we have 3 notes that have been completed in the last 72 hours. Okay. I can see that they were done by SL Nurse 1. 1 was done, yep, so these last 3, so the 12th and then the 13th here. That's funny. Okay. So in here, I can see that for Joanne here, we had, it looks like an altercation between a staff person and the resident. And then here we had a throw foo at the resident, well behaved after her nap. Okay. So we've got some different pieces of information that are directly on this page. We have her the apartment information. We've got their level of care. We've got the specific note, the date, the time, as well as who did that note. You'll also have the show hide columns option where you can see additional information. So if I'd like to see when they moved in, maybe that's really important. If they're a new resident, they might be having a hard time kind of adjusting. So you might have more documentation around those times. And so you might want to have that move-in date on the page to be able to see that. So from here, I can actually take a look, and there's a couple different ones. If I had a resident that was already in my list and I needed to do a new note for them, I can just simply select the name. So I'm just selecting this particular line here for Judith, and then I can go to new, or I do have the security to modify and delete. That's my particular user, so I do see those options. Or I can just simply view. Viewing is just going to pull open a little bit more information. View actually allows you to see all of the notes for this particular resident. So I can see from here that there were two back in 2019, so pretty old there. And then here's that most recent one. The most recent one was a behavior note. These prior to, one was an appointment, and then one was a behavior as well. And I can again see who did that. I can choose to print the particular note out, or I can print or export the entire page using that export to PDF option. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main page. Okay. In the particular notes area, it is going to default to showing notes for the last 72 hours. If there aren't any notes in the last 72 hours, then this page will appear blank. So if that does happen, you want to go to your filter. And in here, just under time frame, you want to just sort of expand that out. You can choose to look for a date range, which will then give you two calendar icons to search between, or you can choose to show all notes, which will just be everything for all of time. Okay. And then you can also sort by a note type. So if I only want to see, say, behavior notes, I can choose to do that. You will see that there are a lot of different types of notes that can be recorded. And so when you are adding a new note, you will select the type of note that you're adding, and then you can choose to use this filter here to sort for those specific kinds of notes once you get to this area. You can also choose to sort by the user who wrote the note. So I can actually take a look in here if I want to see just those that I have entered. I can go through, and there I am. Go ahead and search that out. Looks like those are the only two here. So I can see when those two occurred. This one looks to have more information on it. So when I do that more, it's going to go ahead and add that additional detail to my page. Okay. Go back up to my filter here. I am going to go ahead and select all instead. And then under notes, I'm going to go to all. Okay. And there we go. Now from here, I have Fred listed out several times. It looks like I've got many, many notes for him. And that's actually quite a bit. So I don't really necessarily want to see that. I'm actually just going to go back to just those that I've done. I actually wrote those as well, didn't I? Let's do back through December up to today's date, or the 31st, excuse me. Okay. There we go. Okay, we have a few. Okay, so let's say I need to do a new note. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select Jane here. She's the one I'd like to work on. I'm going to go ahead and select her name. I'm going to go to new. Under this particular area, I'm going to go ahead and select the note type. So perhaps this is just a regular progress note. Okay, and now I can fill in the note itself. Previous notes will display below, so I'll be able to see all previous notes for her. So I can see the history of what's been going on with her across all note types. Okay. So in here, I'm just going to go ahead and say, met with Jane. Okay. So you do have 2,000 characters for a note, so you have quite a bit of space there to be able to document. I am going to go ahead and hit save here, and that's going to add it to the list below. So here's that most recent progress note, time stamped, and then my username on that, and then the note itself. Okay. Now to get back to that main page, I'm just going to go ahead and hit cancel here. It's going to bring me back to the main notes page. Okay. Now the notes themselves, from here, let's say you need to run an audit log. I can go ahead and select the note I'd like to audit. Let's say, let's go to Jane again. There was one in here that had an edit on it. There you go, notes edited. So I'm going to go ahead and audit that one. Okay. So if a note has been modified or edited, you will be able to run the audit report on it. So when I'm taking a look at this particular one, I can see that the previous note it was a behavior note. It was done at 10:37 a.m. And then here was the original note, okay? And then I went back in and I modified that note at 10:42, and I can see the additional information. So it looks like, what did I change in here? Doesn't look like I actually changed much of anything in there, but it must have hit the modify option to go in and then just resaved it. So anytime that is done, you will be able to run an audit log on that. You can see what the changes were, who made that change, the timestamp, the date, and you'll be able to export this to PDF if necessary. Okay. And if it's a super long list, you can search. So if you wanted to see, if so-and-so had done a particular modification, you can go and you can actually search for that person's name here. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and close that out. Okay. We'll clear out that search. Also from this page, you'll see that there's a quick links. This will allow you to navigate to other pages or other screens. And so you aren't utilizing the incidents over here. You're actually utilizing events, which is part of a later training, okay? Now, part of the evaluations and service plans, this again just allows you to navigate back and forth. You also have your hyperlinks up at the top, or you can use your menu, okay? Are there specific questions around the notes in here? Being able to document notes, how you create a new one, being able to go in and search for them, questions around this area? Okay, perfect. Well, then we'll go ahead and move on to the reports area. And again, I'm just going to kind of reference our agenda here. So from the agenda, we have finished the evaluations, forms, service plans, notes, and now we're finishing up with reports. Okay, go ahead and minimize that out. We'll go to reports here, evaluations due. Okay. Now in the evaluations due here, your community dropdown is going to be restricted to whatever communities you actually have access to. I do have access to all of them, and so I'm going to be able to see all of them. I'm just going to go ahead and run this for the training community, and I can look for a specific period of time, okay? I am actually going to go and look at February, and let's look through. You'll notice it actually just changed the date format for me. So I'm going to go through 2-3 March 31st. There we go. And then I can either select to run the report via PDF or Excel. I'm going to go ahead and run the PDF version. Okay. So it looks like in that time frame, I have 3 individuals who have evaluations that are due. The next evaluations are due in March, so in the month of March. The current effective dates for those evaluations. So here I can see that this one was 12/14. Now, under the current evaluation type, this is something that's actually going to be fixed in this upcoming release, where the actual type or the reason the evaluation was done does properly display on this particular report. Okay. So for this one, it would these would all actually be reassessments. The T20 is a reassessment, but instead the language will actually display as evaluation, or excuse me, reassessment. Okay. So this allows you to run that report and be able to kind of look up in the far distant future, be able to export this report, and then you can actually print this if you need to. Because this is a pop-up window and it is a PDF, the little black bar in the top right is where the print option will come up. So there's that little printer icon. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and close that. Okay. I'm back on the main page here. Okay. And also from here, we'll go to reports again. And this time I'm gonna go ahead and look at the POC task history report. Now this is documentation that has been done in Care Assist for point of care. Okay. And I'm actually gonna go back and look at a previous time frame. So I'm gonna go back and look at last week. Okay. Looking at that same community, I do have the ability in here to look by category. And so what I mean by that is I can actually search by, let me get that to open. See if this runs. There we go. Okay. I have to look at why this pop-ups aren't walking down here. Okay, so a category is essentially the care setting. So AL, IL, memory care. Caregiver, this would actually be the drop-down list of the person's name. So you can actually select a specific caregiver to look at. The position, if you would prefer to look by position type. So that could be, you know, administrator, nurse, caregiver, or resident assistant, EMR or med tech, whatever position type. You can also sort by the specific resident. You can choose to also include anybody that has moved out. The task category, this is going to be where you find ADLs, mobility, health-related services, those types of things, those kind of higher level categories. Subcategories is where you're going to actually find things like the dressing and grooming, bathing, bathroom assistance, med assistance, those types of things. And then the completion, this is what response was selected when they went to complete that task. So inside of Care Assist, they have 3 options: complete, complete with exception, or not complete. And so when you have the ability here in this report to actually sort by the type of response that was selected. If complete is with exception is selected, they are required to provide an exception reason. And so you have the ability to then sort by that reason that was selected. Same thing goes if not complete was selected, they have to provide a reason. And so you can sort by that reason here as well. Okay. The comments and invalid tasks, comments is if they had included any notes, and invalidated tasks if they had to go back and mark one of their documentation items as invalid, perhaps it was recorded on the wrong resident, or if they had to amend their own documentation, maybe they had additional information that they needed to provide or document. Those 2 things which display under this particular selection box. So if I go ahead and generate that, see if we've got any of that. Doesn't look like we do. Okay. Okay. So here I can see what's been documented. It looks like on 1/6 there was quite a bit of documentation. Looks like Linda and I both did that. So for Fred here, I can see that this was done under activities. He actually went to a book club, so I can see that Linda recorded that. Under this particular ADL section, bathroom assistance was completed, took 30 minutes, and there was an extra bath that was done due to incontinence. As I move on down here, I can see here, this one actually looks like he originally refused and then came back and asked for his shower. And so I can see that listed in here. Same thing here, mobility. This one actually has an asterisk on it. And I'm gonna have to zoom out here just so I can pull that into view. I can actually see this was that amended value. So here I can see that I amended that, the date and the timestamp, and I had selected that more data was available. Okay, so and I actually can see here, I had originally recorded that the resident was not there, he was absent. So I had recorded it not complete. And then I actually went back in and had to modify that, mark it complete. I'm assuming I was able to find that resident. And so I was able to adjust that particular documentation. So here I can see this one was marked amended, and then here is the amended value. Okay. This report can also be run in Care Assist if you need to run it there. It's also available to be run on the Elite side. So this report is available in all 3 areas. So depending on where you happen to be working, you are able to run this particular report. Okay. And that actually brings us to the end of today's training. Are there any questions that you have been kind of thinking about? Anything you'd like me to go back over and kind of review? Okay. I'm not hearing or seeing anything in the chat box. So I will go ahead and let you guys go and give you back the rest of your day. I hope you have a good Thursday. Again, the recording will be sent to Linda, and Linda will be able to distribute to all of you for future reference.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.